Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're doing a comparison between two Squier guitars, and this is a video that you guys have asked for, so here you go. This is the 2023 Squier Sonic Telecaster in California Blue up against the 2021 Squier Classic Vibe Esquire in Lake Placid Blue. Now these are two guitars that I purchased myself with my own money, so this video is in no way sponsored or affiliated with Squier or Fender, so the opinions are going to be 100% my own as usual. So yeah, this video came about because the 2023 Sonic Telecaster found its way into my collection. I'm very impressed with it, and a lot of you have said, well, how good is it compared to other models? And I've already compared this guitar to the Harley Benton TE62cc, video elsewhere on my channel if you'd like to see that. But now it's up against the Mac Daddy of the Squier line, the Classic Vibe Esquire. I would have done this video against a Classic Vibe Tele, but I don't have one. I just happen to have an Esquire, so you're going to have to make do with that today. And they're fairly similar guitars, but there will be differences. Now firstly, we're going to have the price difference. So in 2023, the Sonic Tele cost me 179 euros, so that's under $200, and you're going to pay about twice the price for a Classic Vibe Telecaster or a Classic Vibe Esquire if you can still find one. So that's the difference, and what we're going to try and work out throughout the course of this video is the Sonic Tele worth it, or is it actually more worth your money to spend twice as much to get a guitar that is twice the value and twice the worthiness, if you will. So stick around for that too. We're going to play the guitars in as many different musical styles and settings as we possibly can. But first, I'm going to tell you about the features and the specifications of both of them, so we can see how they're similar and how they differ as well. So let's start with the Squier Sonic Telecaster. And so this is the Squier Sonic Telecaster, new in the Sonic lineup for 2023. The Sonic guitars replace Squier's iconic Bullet range of guitars, which most of you watching this will be familiar with, I guess. They're the entry-level or most affordable guitars that Squier and Fender say are perfect for kids learning, for students, but also for more experienced players too. And I've already proved in the individual video that I did of this guitar in depth, again, elsewhere on my channel, that this is really worth the money because it's a massively fun instrument. But what do you get for that money? Well, you get this beautiful California blue finish here, and underneath that we have a poplar body. So that's a decent body wood right from the off. Now the body of the Sonic Tele is going to be slightly slimmer of that than the Classic Vibe, and you can see that just here. It's about 1/4 of an inch in terms of the body thickness difference. That's something that is just true across the Sonic range, and it was true of Bullet range Teles as well. It's also true of Affinity range Squier guitars, which is the range between the Sonics and the Classic Vibes. So we've got that poplar body with the California blue finish and a pretty standard looking Telecaster affair on the front then. A single ply white scratch plate, which really goes well with the California blue finish for me. We've got two Squier-designed traditional Telecaster type pickups developed in-house, and I've had good information that these pickups are also found on the more expensive Squier Affinity guitars. We've got a 6 saddle bridge here, which means that each one of the 6 strings is individually intonatable and settable in terms of action, string height as well. You string the strings through the bridge as well, so there's no string through body here, so that makes things simple, and some people do tend to like that. We have a 3-way selector switch to move between the pickups, a volume control and a tone control, and it's all no-name chrome hardware apart from that. Moving up to the neck, and we have a laurel fingerboard on a satin finished maple neck. We have 21 frets. The frets themselves are narrow tall. The nut is a plastic nut. It's 42 millimeters wide. The scale length is 25.5 inches. Standard Tele length 648 millimeters, that is. The neck profile itself is an exceedingly comfy medium to slightly chunky C shape. I find it really sits naturally in my hand, so that's really cool. We have a fingerboard radius of 9.5 inches as well, so a nice modern feeling fingerboard radius. And up to the headstock end, traditional Telecaster headstock with 6 in-line tuners. So that's the Sonic Telecaster. That's what 179 euros will get you in 2023. Now let's look at the 2021 Squier Esquire. And this is the 2021 Squier Classic Vibe Custom 60s Esquire in Lake Placid Blue. Now this guitar I brought new in 2021 because I really was taken by it. I love single pickup guitars, and I just had to have it when I saw it was Lake Placid Blue as well. Also with the double binding, that's a beautiful touch which I really like. I've had this guitar for 2 years, I've played it a lot since then, and it's one of my favorites in my collection because I love Teles, I love blue guitars, and I love single pickup instruments. But this cost me me more than twice as much as the Sonic Tele. So is it worth it? Well, let's take a look at those specs then. So we've got a NATO body on this guitar, whereas the Sonic Tele has a poplar body. The Lake Placid blue finish on this one is beautiful. It's been applied perfectly, and we've got that double binding, front and back binding that just makes it look fantastic. A 3-ply black parchment scratch plate as well just gives you that beautiful classic look. The Sonic Tele has a much more modern look to it, I feel. Now, on top of the body of this one, we have more classic looks as well, especially in terms of the bridge. This is an older style ashtray bridge with 3 saddles, 2 strings per saddle, and we have that single Squier-designed Alnico 5 pickup. We also have a volume and a tone control, and despite just having the one pickup, a 3-way selector switch. If you're not familiar with the Squiers, a very quick overview of that now. When you're in what would be the bridge position, you take the tone control out of the circuit here, and you just have pure, full-on, top-end goodness, spanky, country, sparkly Esquire tones. Flick it to the middle setting, and that actually brings the tone control back into play, and you've got something which is more akin to a Telecaster bridge pickup. Flick it over to the neck position, you cut the tone control out again, and all the tone is taken out of your circuit. Now, back in the day, that was intended to give guitarists more of a way of sounding like a bass. It's a muffled, thumpy sort of a sound, which you will hear in the playing part of this video. It's not something that I think many modern players, and in fact a player like me, would ever really use, but it's a cool sound nonetheless, and some of you may find a use for it. So that's the body again. Let me just show you the back. String through on this one as well. Very, very cool guitar, but being an Esquire, you can also string it through the bridge, because some Esquire players also happen to like that. Moving up to the neck, and we have some similarities here to the Sonic Tele, but also some differences. Now, the similarities are mainly that we've got an Indian laurel fingerboard, and the neck itself is maple, 21 narrow tall frets again, and a 42mm bone nut. Now, I do have a bit of a bone to pick with Squier here, because they did say back in the day that these guitars came with bone nuts as standard, but when I took this guitar to my local tech to get it set up, he took one look at that nut and said that is not a bone nut, and he promptly fitted one for me, but it didn't have one before. It was a synthetic or fake or plastic, in other words, nut. So there we go. This one has a bone nut after the setup, but you probably wouldn't get one as standard, which I think is a bit of a shame, seeing as it said that on the website back in the day. But anyway, rant over. We have a vintage tint to the maple neck on this guitar, and it's got a heavy poly finish as well, so it's going to be a stickier feeling neck. If you've got sweaty hands, take that into account. The neck profile on this one is, I would say, more of a D shape, and it's similar in terms of the overall size to that of the Sonic Tele. They're both very comfortable. If you prefer a C or a D shape, that might affect your decision if you're going to be buying one of the two. And also, the big decision is going to be satin finished neck or poly finished neck. If either of those are preferential to you, then make sure that you check these out before making your own decision. Now again, 25.5 inch, 648mm scale length here, and up there you can see the vintage tinted Tele headstock with 6-in-line tuners. So this is the Squier Classic Vibe Esquire, the 2021 model, and here we have the 2023 Squier Sonic Telecaster. Those were the specifications, and you can see that there are some similarities, but there are some differences too. And what we're going to do now is hear how similar and how different these guitars sound, because I'm going to play these two guitars in as many different musical styles as I possibly can. My rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amp. We'll start on the amp's clean channel, we'll play some country and some folk and some pop and stuff like that. Then I'll kick on my Greer Lightspeed organic overdrive pedal, and we'll do some indie rock stuff as well. After that, we'll go to the amp's crunch channel and then the lead channel, and we'll play some classic rock and some harder rock and some punk as well. And at the end, it'll be back to the clean channel. I'll kick in the Rev G3 distortion pedal, we'll tune the two guitars down to drop D and see if they can do a bit of metal and a bit of chugging. Enough talk then, let's test the 2023 Squier Sonic Tele against the 2021 Squier Classic Vibe Esquire, and I'll give you more thoughts and more detailed opinions on the two guitars afterwards. Okay then, so that was the 2023 Squier Sonic Telecaster up against the 2021 Squier Classic Vibe Custom 60s Esquire. And I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones, and what I would like you to do now is leave me a short comment telling me which of the two guitars you preferred. Do you think that for under $200 the Squier Sonic series is where it's at, or do you think that it's worth paying almost or possibly even more than double your money to get a bit of classic vibe goodness in your life? Leave me comments down there, and I look forward to getting a bit of a discussion going in this comment section. But anyway, what I wanted to do now was give you a bit more detail in terms of my opinions. I've owned both of these guitars and had them and played them pretty intensively, especially the Esquire, having had that for a couple of years now. And what I'm going to do is tell you which one I think is most worth your money. But what I'm going to do first is go through a series of different categories when you're considering buying a new guitar, which I think is important in terms of deciding where to splash the cash. So we'll talk about how the guitars look, we'll talk about how they feel, the build quality, the sounds, and stuff like that. Let's start with the prices then, because that's a very important feature, of course, and we have to say that the clear winner in that category is going to be the Sonic Tele, because it's literally half the price of the Classic Vibe. If you're looking at specifications, if you're looking at features, you might think that you're going to be getting more out of the Classic Vibe, but on paper, at half the price, you can't look past the Sonic Telecaster, so it wins in terms of that alone. I think the next thing you're going to look at is going to be looks themselves, the aesthetics of the guitar, and this is a deeply personal thing, of course. I own both of these guitars because I was a sucker for how they looked as well. I love a blue guitar, I love this California blue finish, and the late Placid blue with double binding on the Classic Vibe Esquire is one of my favourite guitar finishes of all time as well. I love a dark board too. These guitars both have laurel boards. I would prefer rosewood or even ebony, just a nicer, darker, less dry feeling board would be fantastic, but I'm realistic in the 2020s as well that I'm not going to get that. But in terms of looks then, if I had to pick between the two, honestly, it's a really tricky choice. But let's say that the Squier Classic Vibe Esquire just edges that because of the late Placid blue with that binding. It's absolutely beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I love the California blue finish of this guitar, but there's something special about LPB with double binding that wins it for me there. But again, your mileage is going to vary on this one because your choice is going to be 100% personal. After that, we're going to move on to the build quality and how the two guitars feel, and this is where they're going to start to differ a little bit. Now, I have to say that the 2023 Sonic Tele absolutely feels fantastic for the price. I haven't had this guitar set up or anything like that. That would make it even better. But straight out of the box, I bought this online, sight unseen. It has been really, really decent. None of the problems that you might expect with a cheap guitar are apparent. The finish has been done really well. All of the controls work fantastically. The neck is beautiful and smooth in terms of feel. None of the frets have sharp ends or anything like that. The nut has been decently cut. The intonation is all right. The action is decent too. The cheapy Squier no-name tuners do their job as well. Really, no complaints whatsoever. Fantastic value for money in that sense. In terms of the build quality of the Classic Vibe Esquire, that guitar's just had an amazing setup and a bone nut put on it, so it does feel like it plays like $1 million right now, and it does win by a few percentage points in terms of the playability. But straight out of the box, I remember that the Classic Vibe Esquire had a slightly worse setup than the Sonic Tele did. I'm not going to score it lower for that, but in terms of build quality, the Esquire does feel like a slightly more solid guitar in some respects, and it feels like a more classic instrument. It's in the name, isn't it, of course, classic vibe, but it has that vintage tint to the neck and the poly finish there. It has that slightly thicker body. It just feels a bit more chunky overall, and in that sense you do feel like you're getting a more expensive instrument. In terms of the weights of the two guitars, they're actually very similar. The Sonic Tele is actually a tiny bit heavier than the Classic Vibe Esquire. Now, the Classic Vibe Esquire weighs 3.1 and a bit kilograms, which is about 7 pounds dead, and the Sonic Telecaster weighs 7 pounds 2, which is actually 3.36 kilograms. Both very decent weights, both feel fantastic and balance really well when you're playing them sitting down or if you're standing up and using a guitar strap, so no problems there. With the Squier Classic Vibe Esquire as well, in terms of the hardware and everything else, everything top notch for the price too. And because that guitar feels a bit more expensive and because it's been set up now, in terms of the build quality, I have to give it the slight edge, but I might change my opinion when the Sonic Tele gets its set up too. So again, in terms of the price, the Sonic Tele is performing fantastically well for the money in that regard too. The next thing to talk about is the playability of the two guitars, and this is also a really important yet really personal thing for each guitar player, and a lot of this hinges around the necks for me. Now, the big difference is that you've got a satin finished maple neck on the Sonic Tele, and you've got that thick poly finish on the Squier Classic Vibe Esquire. And for me personally, every day I'd pick a satin finished neck over a poly finished neck because that's just personal preference. I find them slinkier and easier to get up and down, and so for that reason I would be picking the Sonic Tele's neck in terms of playability. I don't think the rest of the guitars, being Teles and Esquires, I don't think there's too much in it in terms of the playability, so purely based on the neck, the Sonic Tele is going to win in the playability stakes. Now we come to another massively crucial point, which is going to be the sounds of the two guitars. Now we are dealing with a Telecaster and an Esquire here, so they are going to have inherent differences, but they're also going to have clear similarities too, because they're both cut from the same cloth, effectively. Let's start with the Sonic Tele, as I've got it in my hands here. This, again, for the money, is a fantastic Telecaster. The bridge pickup is beautiful at what it does, and it sounds like an authentic Tele. It has great sparkle in the top end, it does spanky country tones, it does great classic tones, it does soul tones, great rhythm tones, great lead tones too. I love the bridge pickup on this guitar. The neck pickup is weaker in terms of output and in terms of tonal performance, at least to my ears, and I feel that the neck pickup kind of suffers. I don't use it for almost anything really, and when I've got the two pickups on together in the middle setting, it sounds fantastic, but it's the bridge pickup that is pulling the two of them through, so that works for me as well. If I was going to be changing one pickup out of this guitar, it would be the neck pickup, and of course the Esquire doesn't have a neck pickup to speak of, so that's never going to be an issue. The Esquire has just that one bridge pickup with the three different options. There is a magic to single pickup guitars, there is a little bit of magic to this Esquire too, and most of it comes when you're in the bridge pickup setting, when the tone control is out of the circuit and you're purely giving it everything. That has amazing top end clarity, it has a brittle hardness to it, which is too much for some people, but I really, really love about it. It's perfect for classic clean stuff, it's perfect for country twang, it's absolutely great for aggressive indie chords and for classic rock as well, and that's something that I personally play a lot when I'm just noodling around at home, so that works really well for me. And I think that the other thing you can also always do with the Esquire is go to the middle pickup selector setting, and that is the bridge pickup, or the only pickup with the tone control in operation, and you can always wind things back a little bit there if it is a little bit too glassy for you. The Esquire is fantastic for so many styles, and when I play it I don't miss having a neck pickup at all. It really does everything well. You can strum chords with it, you can play country, you can play funk and pop and rock, and even high gain stuff is great with it too. Now the neck pickup selector setting on the Esquire, that really muffly sort of sound, doesn't really do anything for me personally, but I know that quite a lot of people like to use that with a lot of gain for sort of singing lead sounds. It's like having a wah pedal on and turning it, cocking it back sort of the wrong way, putting your heel all the way down and taking all of the tone out of it. It does work for some things, and I did a couple of sound samples where you can hear that in action, and it does that thing. It's not personally for me, but if it's something you want, you can replicate that with the neck pickup of the Tele here, or you can also go to the bridge pickup and wind the tone control all the way down, and that will get you there as well. Now, in terms of the overall sound quality, in terms of the cleans, I think that the Esquire edges it somehow. When it came to crunch tones for indie and classic rock, for example, I just think that there's a bit more character to the tone of the pickup in the Classic Vibe Esquire. That's not to say that the tone in the Sonic Tele is not fantastic, especially for the money, because it really is, but there's just a bit more va-va-voom in the Esquire, so that works better for me. When it came to the really high gain stuff, I think the pickups actually delivered a very similar performance. You get amazing amounts of clarity out of a Tele bridge pickup or an Esquire pickup when you're playing metal, and with the Rev G3 pedal you really have amazing definition playing chords and doing chugs and stuff like that. You don't have the massive low end that you get from a humbucker, so don't buy these guitars if you're only going to be playing metal like that, but they really do a great job for high gain playing, so I can't recommend both of them enough. Overall, in terms of total sound stakes, it's quite a hard decision. When I'm playing the Esquire, I don't miss a neck pickup whatsoever, but when I'm playing a Tele like this with two pickups, I really do quite enjoy that middle pickup selection with both pickups on, and if the neck pickup was better on this, I would definitely select the Sonic Tele over the Esquire. But in terms of sound, they're basically neck and neck, and for that reason, I think I'm probably going to go with my gut and say that the Sonic Tele right now, because I'm in the honeymoon phase, and because it does give me the extra options of the extra pickup, I'm going to give it just the slightest of edges, but again, your mileage may vary on that one. With all that said and done then, which of these two guitars is better and which one should you spend your money on? Well, that's a tricky question, and I hope that the discussion and the sounds that you've heard in this video have really helped you decide a little bit more. But a few more musings from me. Well, for me personally, I own both of these guitars, and I'm very happy that I have them both in my collection because they do fulfill slightly different criteria that I personally like. As I've stated before, I love single pickup guitars. I have other single P90 pickup guitars that I always pick up and play, and I often pick up the Esquire over more expensive guitars in my collection because it's so simple, so straightforward, so direct and so fun, and it has such a great attack. The Sonic Tele, meanwhile, is in some ways more sophisticated because you've got more pickup options, you've got more options in terms of tweaking the tones, and it just does that classic Tele thing a little bit more. Now for me, if I was to have to get rid of one of the guitars, I'd probably get rid of the Sonic Tele because I have other Telecasters, but if I was going to be buying new in 2023, if I didn't own either of these guitars and I was going to be purchasing one now, for the all-round goodness and for the pure value for money that it represents, I would go for the Squier Sonic Telecaster. I feel that the Esquire is a slightly finer guitar and it does feel like a more expensive instrument when you pick it up, but the Sonic Tele is just really, really good value for money. It's a whole load of fun, and I could of course put a bit of the money saved into modifying certain things if I wanted to do that too. So that's my opinion on it. Let me know what you think about that. Again, discussion going. I look forward to hearing what you guys think. A quick word about other guitars if you're into this sort of thing but wondering what else is out there. Well, there's a bunch of different options in the Squier range, of course. You could go in between the Sonic Tele and the Classic Vibe Tele or Esquire lineup and get one of the Squier Affinity Telecasters. I've played a bunch of those over the years and those are great guitars too, and I hope to be able to persuade myself to purchase one at some point so I've got all three guitars across the three Squier ranges, and then we can do a massive comparison between those three too. Now in terms of other brands, the Harley Benton TE62cc is a guitar that I own. It's a fantastic instrument and I've compared it against the Sonic Tele already. I would heartily recommend that guitar too. It's about the same price or a little bit cheaper than the Sonic Tele, but in terms of value for money, it is an absolutely wonderful instrument. If you wanted to spend a bit more money, you could of course then go for the Fender range. My number one guitar is a Fender Mexican Telecaster from 2014 and I just love that instrument, but there are so many Teles and also Tele type guitars from other brands out there as well, so head down to your local music store, try out a bunch and see which one works best for you. I hope that this video has answered all of your questions that you may have had about the Sonic Tele and about the differences between the Sonic Tele and the Classic Vibe Esquire, but if there's anything else you'd like to know, drop me a line down there and I shall answer to the very best of my ability. And if you're still around, it would make my day, it really would, if you'd like the video or even consider subbing to my channel, because that really does help a lot. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.